I came home early on a Tuesday afternoon and heard my stepson whisper. I cut his brake lines. "See you at his funeral tomorrow." My wife was sitting across from him at our kitchen table. Neither of them knew I was standing just inside the garage door, perfectly still in the shadows. For a split second, I honestly wondered whether I had misheard him. I was 66 years old, too many decades spent around screaming impact wrenches and roaring air compressors had left my hearing less than perfect. But there was nothing wrong with my hearing that afternoon. Ryan's voice came through the narrow opening of the cracked door, clearly. Karen, my wife, lowered her voice. "Stop saying things like that. I'm not joking, Mom," Ryan replied. My fingers tightened around the cold metal of the door handle. I had left physical therapy. 20 minutes, early normally. I would have stopped at Bass Pro Shops to pick up fishing line. Ryan knew that everybody knew my routine. I drove down to my cabin near Table Rock Lake every single Friday morning, hours before sunrise. That was exactly why Ryan felt safe discussing my murder in my own kitchen at 3:20 in the afternoon. Karen's wooden chair scraped against the tile floor. "What exactly did you do?" "I made sure the truck won't get him all the way down the hill." Ryan dismissed her. My left hand reached out and braced against the drywall. The sheer, terrifying reality of the situation was hitting me like a physical blow. "Fix it," Karen demanded, panic threading her voice. "It doesn't work that way," Ryan snapped. "He checks that old truck every single week. If I go crawling underneath it again, somebody might see me." Karen's voice dropped until I had to strain to catch her words. "You said you were only trying to scare him. I said what you needed to hear." That sentence sent a completely different kind of shockwave through my system. My wife had known enough to be terrified before I even walked into the house. I pushed the heavy fireproof garage door open another fraction of an inch. Ryan was sitting with his back to me. He looked as calm as a man discussing the weather forecast. Karen faced my direction, but her eyes were entirely fixed on her son. "What happens when the police investigate?" she asked, trembling. "They won't," Ryan said smoothly. "Think about it. Old truck, old driver, dangerous road in the dark. They'll just pull him out of the ravine and call it a tragic accident." My truck was a 2008 Ford F-150 with nearly 200,000 miles on the odometer, but I maintained that vehicle better than most people maintained their homes. I had bought it back when Mercer Auto and Towing still had a dozen full-time mechanics. Ryan knew perfectly well how much I cared for that truck because I had personally taught him how to change the oil on it when he was 17. "Daniel notices everything," Karen argued. "Not anymore," Ryan retorted. "He forgets where he puts his reading glasses. He takes a handful of pills for his knees every morning. Half the family already thinks he's slowing down. No one is going to question an old man losing control on a steep grade." I almost stepped into the kitchen right then. I wanted to grab him by the collar and slam him against the granite island. But at 66 with one bad knee, I knew how a physical confrontation would end. He would overpower me, deny everything, and claim I had attacked him in a fit of dementia. Worse, whatever physical evidence existed on my truck would disappear before I could prove a thing. Karen pressed both hands flat against the tabletop. "I never agreed to this. You signed enough papers." Ryan snapped back. "The insurance forms, the property documents, all of it. I signed loan applications." Ryan leaned closer to her, his voice dropping into a menacing register. "If you call him, or if you call the cops, I'll tell them you helped me plan it. Then you can explain to a judge why your signature is on everything." Karen stared at him, her eyes wide with horror. I waited 10 seconds. I waited for my wife to shout my name, to scream for help, to do anything to defend the man she had been married to for 15 years. She didn't. That silence hurt in a profoundly different way. Ryan had been 14 when Karen and I started dating. I had paid his community college tuition. I gave him a job sweeping the service bays at my auto shop. When he got arrested for driving drunk, I quietly paid for his defense attorney. When his boat detailing business failed, I covered 3 months of his rent. Every single time I tried to draw a hard line, Karen asked me to give him just one more chance. And every single time, I did. Standing in that dark garage, I finally understood exactly what all those second chances had taught him. They had taught him permission. He thought I was weak. What Ryan didn't know was that, before I opened Mercer Auto and Towing, I spent 12 years running logistics for military intelligence in active combat zones. I knew how to spot a lethal ambush before the first shot was fired. I eased the garage door shut, moving with agonizing slowness. Outside, I sat behind the wheel of my car, but didn't start the engine. Call the police, my conscious mind ordered. Then my tactical training kicked in. Tell them what? Karen might finally tell the truth, or Ryan might frighten her into denying the entire thing. If Ryan realized I had heard him, he could quietly remove whatever he had done to the truck. No, I couldn't just react. I needed to build an airtight perimeter, secure the evidence, and launch a counter-offensive that would absolutely obliterate him. Ryan had just made a fatal mistake. He thought he was hunting a tired old mechanic. He was about to find out what happens when you try to ambush a soldier. I drove 2 blocks away and pulled into the parking lot of a quiet diner. I waited until the waitress was out of earshot, then pulled out my phone and called Jake Holloway. Jake was the man who currently managed my old repair shop. I had sold him the business 2 years ago, though I still retained ownership of the commercial real estate. "Hey, boss," Jake said cheerfully. "Jake, I need a tactical favor. I need a flatbed tow truck at my house tonight." The cheerfulness instantly vanished. What happened? I don't know the full extent yet, but I need my Ford picked up without starting the engine. After 1 o'clock in the morning, no flashing lights, roll in dark, take it straight to your secure lock bay. You want me to put it on the lift and inspect it? No, I ordered firmly. Load it, secure it, and absolutely do not touch anything underneath the chassis. Daniel, are you in trouble? Yes, I said. My next call was to Michael Collins. Michael and I had never been friends. We had shared awkward handshakes at family weddings. But Michael had spent 40 years of his life working underneath heavy commercial diesel trucks. And for all his personal faults, as a father, I had never known the man to lie about a piece of machinery. "Michael, my truck is being flat-bedded down to your shop tonight." "What for?" he asked, confused. "I need you to personally inspect the brake system and the undercarriage frame." "Why me?" "Because I trust your eyes," I said flatly. He went totally silent. "Is this about Ryan?" "I'll explain everything after you see the truck." Michael exhaled a long sigh. "All right, send it." When I returned home an hour later, Ryan's car was gone. Karen stood at the kitchen sink with her back to me, aggressively scrubbing a perfectly clean frying pan. "How was therapy?" she asked brightly. "Painful," I replied. I gave her every possible opportunity to come clean. I opened the refrigerator, filled a glass with water, and stood directly behind her, letting the silence stretch out. Finally, she broke. "I have a headache," she said quickly. "I'm going upstairs." That was the exact moment I realized I could not protect both my marriage and the truth. If Karen refused to help me, she had made her choice. At 1:52 that morning, Jake rolled his heavy flatbed tow truck into my driveway with the headlights completely off. We quietly pushed the heavy Ford F-150 far enough down the driveway to load it onto the ramp without ever turning the ignition key. Before Jake drove off, I placed the truck keys inside a sealed envelope for Michael. "Check underneath before you call me." A gift from your son at 4:47 a.m. My cell phone vibrated. Michael's name illuminated the screen. The brake line was only the beginning. Michael said without preamble, "There's something else under this truck, Daniel. I think Ryan's been tracking you for weeks. Give me the full report. What did you find?" "The rear primary brake hose has been cut," Michael explained, his voice thick with disgust. "Not completely severed, just sliced deep enough to severely weaken the structural integrity of the line." "What's the tactical impact?" "It means the line might hold while you backed out of your driveway. But once you hit those steep, winding downhill grades near the lake and started braking hard, the hydraulic pressure would have blown the line wide open. Total brake failure." I instantly pictured the treacherous road south of Springfield, an hour before sunrise. The sharp curve near the county line, the flimsy metal guardrail, with nothing but a massive drop into the trees beyond it. Ryan knew that route perfectly. "Don't touch anything else," I ordered. "Daniel, there's more. There's a magnetic GPS tracker attached behind the rear frame near the axle. Professional grade, secured with heavy-duty zip ties. Leave it exactly where it is," I instructed. "Take photographs, 3 different angles." "I already did," Michael said. I hung up and immediately called Jake. The truck had been hauled back from Branson on the same flatbed, and Jake had locked it safely inside the rear service bay. "Don't wipe the chassis. Don't even lean against the quarter panel," I told him. "You calling the cops?" Jake asked softly. "Yes, by 5:30 a.m. I was sitting at my kitchen table. The house looked exactly the same as it had the day before. But it no longer felt like my home. It felt like enemy territory. I called the Springfield Police Department and requested to speak to a detective. I explained that I had physical evidence someone had intentionally sabotaged my vehicle in an attempted homicide. A uniformed officer arrived first, followed by Detective Elena Torres. She was a compact, fiercely intelligent woman with a calm, analytical expression that made you instinctively choose your words with precision. We convened at Mercer Auto just after 7 o'clock. My Ford F-150 sat under the glaring white shop lights. Torres stopped several feet away. "Who touched the vehicle after it was removed from your property?" "Mr. Mercer?" Jake loaded it. Michael Collins inspected it visually down in Branson. He left the damaged areas alone. Torres looked at Michael. "You're the biological father of the person Mr. Mercer suspects?" "Yes, ma'am." Michael walked her through his inspection step by step. A crime scene technician was called in to photograph the undercarriage before carefully extracting the GPS tracker. Another officer documented the damaged brake hose. Torres finally turned to me. "Now, Mr. Mercer, tell me exactly what you heard in your kitchen." I repeated the conversation word for word like a soldier giving an after-action report. When I finished, she looked up. "Did your wife hear the threat?" "Yes." "Will she officially confirm it on the record?" "I honestly don't know." Torres closed her notebook with a definitive snap. "The verbal statement is important, Mr. Mercer, but the physical evidence will carry the heavy weight. Listen to me very carefully. Do not confront your stepson. Do not tell him where the truck is. Act completely normal. Let him think he is still in control." At 6:35 a.m., Jake's phone buzzed loudly. "It's your home security camera," he said. Jake turned the phone screen toward me. Ryan was standing on my front porch, holding 2 cups of Starbucks coffee. He rang the bell, waited patiently, and then casually looked over toward the driveway. Even through the small screen, I saw the instant shift in his posture. His shoulders went rigid. He stepped off the porch and stared intensely at the empty concrete space where my Ford F-150 usually sat. "Go home," Detective Torres commanded quietly. "Drink the coffee, let him talk." By the time I pulled into my driveway, Ryan was standing nervously beside his car. He flashed a brilliant smile when I got out. "Morning, Daniel. I figured I'd bring you a coffee before you headed down to the lake." "That's very thoughtful of you, Ryan." His gaze shifted past my shoulder. "Where's the truck?" "It made a strange noise last night when I pulled in. I had Jake tow it to the shop." "What kind of noise?" He pressed. "Hard to say, a grinding sound." "Did Jake start it up?" "No." "Did he drive it?" "I told you. It was towed." "Did he inspect the rear brakes?" The specific question came out way too fast. He had tipped his hand. I gave him a tired, grandfatherly smile. "Ryan, at my age, every strange noise sounds like it's coming from the rear brakes." He let out a sharp, brief laugh. "Right, sure, well, maybe it's nothing." He stayed for another minute, making idle conversation. Finally, he got into his car, but he didn't drive away. He sat there with his cell phone pressed tightly to his ear, staring blankly for nearly 4 minutes before pulling out of the driveway. I walked inside. Karen came downstairs, looking exhausted. "Was that Ryan?" she asked. "Yes, he thought I'd be driving to the lake today." Her face instantly tightened. I turned to face her, dropping the charade entirely. "The truck was sabotaged, Karen. The brake hose was cut, and there was a military-grade tracker magnetically attached to the frame." She grabbed the back of a dining chair to steady herself. What? No, Ryan wouldn't. I heard him, I interrupted harshly. He knew exactly where the damage was. He just asked me if Jake checked the rear brakes. Her eyes filled with tears. Daniel, please, she begged. We need to think carefully before we destroy his life. I stared at her, feeling a cold detachment settle over me. He tried to end mine. The words hung in the kitchen, brutal and undeniable. Karen sat down slowly. He's in trouble, she whispered brokenly. Deep financial trouble. He borrowed money from people he shouldn't have. How much? I don't know. That isn't an acceptable answer. And what about the papers he mentioned yesterday? Her eyes dropped to the floor. He told me they were temporary loan forms. He said he desperately needed my signature as a guarantor because his credit was destroyed. He took them. I stepped away from the table. She grabbed my sleeve. Daniel, I swear to God, I never agreed to hurt you. I believe that part, I said quietly. But belief wasn't the same thing as trust. Later that morning, Detective Torres interviewed Karen separately. When she finally emerged, Karen looked completely shattered. She admitted that Ryan had recently been asking pointed questions about my life insurance policy. He had asked whether the house would automatically become hers if I passed away. More alarmingly, he had wanted to know exactly who controlled the commercial real estate my old shop sat on if I died unexpectedly. I drove us straight to the office of Rebecca Sloan. Rebecca had handled my legal and corporate work for almost 25 years. She was a brilliant, no-nonsense attorney who had helped me set up my retirement trusts. Give me the SITRIP, she said as we sat down. I gave her the entire tactical briefing. When I finished, she folded her hands and turned her sharp gaze directly onto Karen. Did Ryan ever ask detailed questions about Daniel's estate? Karen nodded slowly. He wanted to know what happened if Daniel died first. He asked about the life insurance, the house, the repair shop property. Rebecca immediately pulled out my massive estate portfolio. Let's review the battlefield. If Daniel dies today, Karen receives the life insurance payout directly. You also become the sole owner of the marital home due to the survivorship clause. However, the old repair shop property is different. When you sold the auto business to Jake, you never transferred ownership of the physical land. That commercial property remains entirely in your name. Karen looked confused. So Ryan wouldn't automatically inherit the shop? No, Rebecca said. He'd inherit absolutely nothing directly. Then why try to kill me if he doesn't get the land? I asked. Because he never needed to inherit it directly. Rebecca looked intensely at Karen. If you receive the life insurance money, Karen finished the sentence herself, horror dawning on her face. I could easily give it to Ryan. Rebecca nodded. And if he somehow convinced you to transfer the repair shop property to him afterward, his financial problems are entirely solved. Ryan wasn't trying to inherit my wealth. He was trying to hijack it through his mother. What paperwork did Ryan ask you to sign last week? Rebecca asked sharply. Karen opened her purse with trembling hands and handed over a thick manila folder. I found these hidden under his old desk when I was cleaning. Rebecca extracted 3 specific pages and placed them separately on the desk. What are these? Karen asked. I've never seen those specific pages. They contain your signature at the bottom, Rebecca pointed out. Now look at the initials on the individual clauses. Karen blinked. Those aren't mine. Rebecca nodded grimly. Your signature at the bottom is genuine. He had you sign the final page of the packet. But these initials on the preceding pages were forged by someone else. Page after page revealed the exact same tactical deception. Ryan had mixed legitimate financial documents with highly fraudulent ones. Karen had blindly signed the final pages. There appears to be a limited power of attorney drafted here for Ryan, Rebecca said. There is also a formal authorization granting Ryan temporary access to one of your primary investment accounts. And here is a draft agreement. It explicitly grants Ryan partial ownership rights and the authority to sell your old repair shop property. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. He doesn't own 1 square inch of that property. No, Rebecca agreed, but he fully intended to. Karen buried her face in her hands, weeping softly. He used me. Can any of this be fixed? I asked, my voice cold and focused. Yes, but we need to execute a total lockdown today. She outlined the strategy with military precision. The repair shop property would be immediately transferred into an irrevocable, protected trust. My life insurance beneficiary would be updated to bypass Karen entirely and go straight to the trust. Karen would legally revoke every single authorization Ryan had tricked her into signing. Every financial door Ryan expected to walk through upon my death would be slammed shut. That afternoon, I packed 2 duffel bags and moved into the small, dusty apartment above Mercer Auto. It wasn't comfortable, but it was secure. An hour later, Detective Torres called. We traced the GPS tracker purchase. The prepaid card was a dead end, but the tracker regularly uploaded its location coordinates to an online account. The account was accessed repeatedly from Ryan's cell phone. Furthermore, the recovery email used to set up the tracker account belongs to Karen. Ryan hadn't just plotted my murder. He had actively hacked his own mother's digital accounts to purchase the murder weapon. He was a hostile threat, and I was going to utterly destroy him. Wednesday evening, my cell phone vibrated on the small, scratched kitchen table in the apartment above the shop. Ryan's name appeared on the screen. I needed to know his current tactical posture, so I answered. Hey, Daniel, Ryan said smoothly. What's up, Ryan? Just checking in. You feeling better today? I heard you've been acting pretty nervous lately. I didn't answer, let him fill the silence. He chuckled, playing the role of the caring relative perfectly. You know, memory changes when people get older, Daniel. It happens to the best of us. You probably just imagined half of whatever scared you the other day. I looked out the dusty apartment window toward the empty commercial parking lot below. You think so? I mean, he laughed lightly. You've been forgetting little things lately. Like your reading glasses. Or your doctor's appointments. My buddy's grandfather started seeing things that weren't there right before they officially diagnosed him with severe dementia. There was no anger left in my chest, only absolute clarity. Ryan wasn't just trying to physically eliminate me. He had been meticulously preparing a psychological backup story. If the brake failure didn't kill me, I would simply become a paranoid, senile old man who couldn't remember reality correctly. No one would believe my accusations. I appreciate your concern, Ryan, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You always looked out for me. The line went quiet for a fraction of a second. I still do. That brief conversation frightened me far more than seeing the cut brake line. It proved a level of premeditated, cold-blooded planning I hadn't wanted to believe he possessed. On Thursday morning, Rebecca called. The trust paperwork is completely executed, she reported briskly. The repair shop property is now heavily protected inside an irrevocable trust. The life insurance beneficiary has been changed to bypass Karen and flow directly into the trust. And we officially revoked every single fraudulent financial authorization he tricked Karen into signing. Good, I said. Lock the doors, Daniel. There's one more piece of intelligence you need. I received a phone call this morning from a regional commercial developer. They said Ryan had firmly promised to sell them your repair shop property. He accepted a $15,000 cash advance from them to secure the preliminary contract. My stomach tightened into a hard knot. Ryan hadn't just been hoping I would die someday. He had already started spending the money from a future he believed was only days away. He had planned my funeral around real estate that was never his to sell. That evening, Karen called my cell. Ryan keeps asking questions, she whispered, clearly terrified. He wants to know why you're staying at the shop instead of coming home. I told him you just needed some space to clear your head. Daniel, he's planning a massive neighborhood cookout this Saturday in his backyard. He keeps telling all the relatives he's making a massive announcement. I think he truly believes his plan worked and the property is his. Let him believe it, I said coldly. We dropped the hammer on Friday afternoon. Michael drove up from Branson and walked into my apartment carrying a heavy plastic tackle box. He popped the latches. Inside wasn't fishing gear. It held dozens of high-resolution, glossy photographs he had taken beneath my truck. The severed brake line, the magnetic tracker, the zip ties, the undercarriage frame close-ups, wide shots, every possible angle documented perfectly. I figured Detective Torres already has digital copies of all these, I said. She does, Michael replied, his face hard and serious. So, why bring me hard copies? Because someday, maybe 5 years from now, you're going to wake up in the middle of the night and wonder if this nightmare really happened. You're going to wonder if you overreacted, or if you were just being paranoid. He tapped the stack of photos. These are for you, cold, hard proof. Saturday arrived warm and bright. It was perfect barbecue weather. By noon, Ryan's expansive backyard looked ready for a neighborhood block party. Pickup trucks lined both sides of the residential street. Upbeat country music drifted over the tall wooden privacy fence. I parked my Buick half a block away. I was perfectly calm, my military training suppressing the adrenaline. Detective Torres had explicitly asked me to park down the street. She wanted the event to unfold entirely naturally before she moved her units in. Michael met me on the sidewalk. "You ready for this?" he asked gruffly. "No," I admitted. "Good. If you were ready to destroy your own family, I'd worry about you." We walked toward the backyard together. As we rounded the corner of the house, Ryan spotted us immediately. A massive, triumphant grin spread across his face. "There he is!" Ryan shouted, raising a red plastic cup in the air. "Everybody, Daniel finally decided to join us." Several relatives waved from lawn chairs. Ryan swaggered over and slapped my shoulder like we were old war buddies. "You picked the perfect day to come out, Daniel. I've got some incredibly exciting news to share." "I've heard," I said. He laughed, a booming, confident sound. "Business has finally taken off for me." I stared right through his eyes. "I hope you didn't spend the money yet." His confident smile flickered for a fraction of a second. "What do you mean?" "Oh," I shrugged casually. "Nothing." He studied my face, searching for a crack in my armor, but found nothing. He forced the grin back into place. "You'll see." As we reached the patio, the crowd gathered around. Ryan confidently climbed onto the small wooden deck, holding a thick manila folder in his hands. He tapped a spoon against his cup to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan announced loudly, his voice carrying over the music, "I've been working on something massive, and it's finally time to share the good news." Everyone turned toward him, smiling and expectant. The trap was officially sprung. Ryan stood on the small wooden deck, beaming with the arrogance of a man who believed he had outsmarted everyone. He opened a thick manila folder dramatically. I waited until the yard grew completely quiet. Then my voice cut through the silence like a military command. "Ryan." He looked down at me, annoyed by the interruption. "Yeah, Daniel? Before you tell everybody about your exciting new real estate venture, shouldn't you actually own the land first?" The triumphant smile vanished from his face instantly. I saw real, unfiltered panic in his eyes. He slowly reached into the folder, his hands trembling slightly. "Actually, Daniel, I brought the official paperwork right here to show." Before he could pull out a single forged page, Karen stood up from her lawn chair in the front row. She was clutching a large manila envelope. "I have the original paperwork, Ryan," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. The backyard fell dead silent. At that exact moment, the heavy wooden side gate swung open. Detective Elena Torres stepped onto the grass, her gold badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. Behind her walked two heavily armed, uniformed police officers. Ryan's face drained of all color, turning a sickly, translucent white. Ryan looked frantically from Karen to the police, and finally to me. He forced a strained, high-pitched laugh. What is this supposed to be?" Torres stepped forward. "Ryan Collins? I'm Detective Elena Torres with the Springfield Police Department. I'd like you to step off that deck and keep your hands exactly where I can see them." Nobody wanted the children to witness what was coming next. An aunt quickly ushered them toward the front yard. Ryan shook his head and laughed again, louder this time. He pointed an accusing finger directly at me. "Daniel, did you seriously call the cops because your old truck needed some repairs? Are you losing your mind?" I called the police, I said quietly, the authority of a combat veteran resonating in my voice, because someone tried to make sure I never came home again. Oh, come on, Daniel. You're being paranoid. My old truck was damaged. Old trucks break all the time. The brake hose didn't break, I stated flatly. Detective Torres nodded toward one of the uniformed officers. He stepped forward carrying a large, clear evidence bag. Mr. Collins, before we go any further, I'd like to give you an opportunity to explain something, Torres said. She pulled out several high-resolution photographs showing the partially sliced hydraulic brake hose and the military-grade GPS tracker zip-tied to the frame. Ryan barely glanced at them, waving a dismissive hand. I don't know anything about that junk. Michael took one slow, deliberate step forward from the back of the crowd. I do. Every head turned toward him. I spent 42 years repairing commercial diesel trucks, Michael said, his voice booming across the patio. That thick hydraulic hose didn't wear out. It didn't fail on its own. Somebody took a blade and cut it. Ryan folded his arms defensively. So? Anybody could have crawled under there and done it. Torres looked toward me. Mr. Mercer, would you explain why your truck wasn't in your driveway on Friday morning? I stepped closer to the deck. Because I came home early from physical therapy on Thursday afternoon. I stood in the garage, and I heard exactly what you said to Karen in the kitchen. His face didn't change, but a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. You don't know what you heard, Daniel. You're confused. You're getting senile. I smiled sadly. You've been calling me confused all week to build a cover story. I suppose my dementia is the reason you asked me so specifically whether Jake had inspected the rear brakes. For the first time, Ryan hesitated. My cousin Linda frowned. What rear brakes, Ryan? Ryan quickly stammered. I was just asking a general question. Really? I took another step forward, backing him against the railing. You asked whether the truck had been started. You asked whether anyone had driven it. You specifically asked whether the rear brake line had been checked. And I never once mentioned the brakes. Silence, absolute, crushing silence. Ryan looked around the yard, his panic mounting. You people actually believe this crazy old man? Karen stood up. Her hands were trembling violently. I do. She walked straight toward Detective Torres. I found these. Torres accepted the envelope and pulled out the forged documents. I thought I was signing standard loan guarantor papers. I wasn't. He mixed fake, legally binding pages into the real paperwork. Mom, don't do this, Ryan pleaded. You forged my initials. You tried to steal Daniel's property. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, cracked tablet computer. There's something else. It used to belong to Ryan. I found it hidden in the guest room. That's my personal property. Ryan yelled as an officer placed the device into an evidence bag. It appears to contain digital messages relevant to an ongoing attempted homicide investigation. Torres answered her calmly. Rebecca Sloan quietly stepped forward from the edge of the patio. I'm Daniel Mercer's estate attorney. Earlier this week, Mr. Mercer transferred the former auto shop property into an ironclad, irrevocable trust. Ryan blinked, the words failing to compute. What? The property can no longer be legally transferred to you, nor can it be sold. Furthermore, the commercial developer you illegally accepted a $15,000 cash advance from has already been fully briefed. They are demanding their money back immediately, or they will press separate fraud charges. Ryan looked as if a heavyweight boxer had just punched him in the gut. Everything he had meticulously planned vanished into thin air. He spun toward me, his face twisted in pure rage. You did this! No, I shook my head slowly. You did. You planned my funeral to steal land that was never yours. Ryan looked wildly around the yard. Nobody spoke. Finally, he pointed a shaking finger at Michael. You were never a real father to me. Michael absorbed the brutal words without flinching. Maybe not. But I never taught you to solve your debt by burying innocent people. Ryan's shoulders slumped. He spun toward the house. I'm done. I'm leaving. He took 2 quick steps, but the 2 uniformed officers intercepted him effortlessly. Ryan Collins, Detective Torres said evenly, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from her belt. You are under arrest for attempted murder, felony fraud, and stalking. As the handcuffs clicked shut with a harsh metallic snap, he looked past the police and locked eyes with Karen. "Mom," he begged, his voice cracking like a terrified child. "Please, I'll pay them back. I'll fix this. You always fix everything for me." Karen stood perfectly still. For the first time in his entire life, she didn't step forward to shield him. Instead, she whispered a single word. "No." Later that evening, I sat alone in the dim apartment above my old repair shop. My phone rang. It was Mark Bell, the county prosecutor. "Mr. Mercer," Mark said carefully, "Ryan is asking about a plea agreement. He claims he had been building a long-term medical record to prove you were becoming mentally confused. He photographed your prescription bottles. He intentionally hid your glasses. His argument would have been that you were senile, hallucinating, and completely confused about the condition of your vehicle." My stomach turned. Ryan had planned to completely erase my credibility first, ensuring nobody would ever believe me if I survived the crash. "He's offering full access to his digital accounts in exchange for a plea deal," Mark explained. "If accepted, he'll spend the next 10 years in state prison." "Take the deal," I said without hesitation. "I just need him locked in a cage where he can't hurt anyone else." I hung up the phone and looked out over the quiet town. Growing old brings unavoidable losses, but the deepest hurt isn't physical. It's realizing the people you spent your life carrying will gladly push you off a cliff if they think there's gold at the bottom. Forgiveness does not require handing someone the same weapon they used to shoot you. Boundaries are not acts of cruelty. You can leave a door unlocked without surrendering the entire house. Protect your perimeter. If you enjoyed this story, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments. How would you have handled a stepson like Ryan? Stay strong and keep your eyes open.